begin at the end as we begin, and that is with Jesus. In verse 14 of Matthew 22, he said, many are called, few are chosen. The calling he's referring to is that God's people are to carry the gospel into the highways and byways. The reason for that, the gospel going to the Gentile nations, was because of Israel's rejection of Christ's overtures in his earthly ministry. This parable begins to remind Israel then that they are indifferent to God, they are apathetic toward his calling to salvation, they have other things to do. They have to go bury people, they have to go work this business over here, it says in the parable. They have other things more of a concern to them than God's kingdom and doing God's will. So the king sends out others to invite those less fortunate, the lame, the maimed, others that would be unfit sacrifices if they were to be offered in the temple. And as a result, we see that they came, and some of them came with the improper clothing. Now, the clothing they needed was the righteousness of Jesus Christ. And he invited everyone out of every kindred, tribe, people, and nation. He purchased with his own blood men out of every kindred, tribe, people, and nation. So this is a calling then to all people to come to the wedding feast, to come to heaven, to come by faith in Jesus Christ. In Acts 17, Paul on Mars Hill, in Acts 17, 32 to 34, we read there that there were three responses to Paul's preaching. And that is, some mocked, some hesitated, said, we'll hear you again, or they delayed, and some actually believed, right? And we see this happening also in this parable. We see, again, a mockery by indifference. We see delaying, people got other things to do, and then we also see the chosen responding. Many are called, few are chosen. This also reminds me that not every human being will get the opportunity to hear the gospel. And men are made right with God by grace, obviously, but the phrase, many are called, few are chosen, again, reminds me that not every human being will get the opportunity to hear the gospel. They're already on their way to hell because of their sin in Adam. And unless God has mercy, they perish. So if a man has an opportunity to hear, he must respond to the gospel. God is just either way. So then, this is a call to the religious and the irreligious of all nations to not take lightly the privilege you have of hearing the word of God, hearing the gospel. Jesus is inviting all men, all women, all peoples to come to his feast. An interesting story relating to this parable was when the famous British preacher from the 19th century, Charles Spurgeon, in which he was preaching his sermon called Compel Them to Come. It was a powerful message, maybe one of the greatest he'd ever preached, and the greatest amount of souls that were saved from that message. But one of the most profound stories about that was that tract, that penny pulpit that was printed through his ministry, was used with British soldiers in a battle in North Africa. And the general read that tract right before they went to war, 300 plus men. And at the end, he asked them to bow and to receive Christ. Every man was converted. And hours later, they were all killed. And it's, again, a powerful reminder there's hope. And right now, you're being compelled to come in to the kingdom. So respond to opportunity.